Alright guys, it's that time again. It's been almost 2 months since my last tier list video, and I think it's finally time to go and update it. A lot has changed in the meta, and I think I have a pretty good list here. I've talked about this with multiple people, so hopefully it's as accurate as it can be, but you probably want to know what it is, so let's get right to it. Now, unlike last time, I want to start from the bottom and go up, simply because I just think it makes it a little bit easier to talk about my placements, but obviously you can skip ahead if you don't want to see like a specific tier. Starting with the D tier, we have Muscle Cookie, Werewolf Cookie, Angel Cookie, and Ninja Cookie. Now, all these cookies are down here because they don't really serve much of a purpose. Muscle Cookie does stand out the most because he is currently the only Earth support, and he is, necessary for champion raids because he can shield the team and prevent them from dying. But he doesn't do much outside of that. He's slow, he's clunky, he doesn't do a ton of damage, his shielding isn't on par with other shielders, and it's overall not worth building him unless you need him for champion raids. Werewolf is they did buff him to try and make him a little more viable, but he'll just never compare to other fighters. But if you're a new player and you have no one else, you can definitely use him for a short time. Angel and Ninja are both in the same predicament where they aren't really needed. Angel can kind of heal, but right now Light has better sustain options, and their buffs are single target, meaning you can't really get much use out of them. And while Ninja is a tagger, he only buffs his own damage with his promotions, and he doesn't do anything to help the team besides putting a tag on the enemy, which, you can do that with Plantain. And while you could slap a support set on him and use him in place of Plantain, Plantain can also do that. So yeah, D tier, cookies that just don't have much viability outside of like one very specific situation. And even then, they aren't really good at it. Next up, we have C tier, which has shrunken quite a lot. And it consists of a gumball cookie, twisted donut cookie, pistachio cookie, and ginger brave. Now these are cookies that are definitely a little bit better. They serve a purpose and they are sufficient at that purpose. Are they amazing overall? No, but they aren't D tier. Gumball, for example, his one job is to be a water type tagger and debuffer. He does that quite well. He can reduce enemies' water type resistance whenever they get hit by his abilities, which makes him good for a mode like Champion Raid where you need someone like him on the team, or for a mode like Guild Battle where you need more water type cookies. But he doesn't find much usage outside of that because he isn't great in any other area. Sure, his ultimate can do some decent damage in a big area, but if we look at a mode like Infinite Labyrinth, why would we use someone like him over someone like, I don't know, Cherry? Twisted Donut kind of has the opposite going on for him. Despite being an Earth type tagger and debuffer, he's not really good at that. Twisted Donut is one of the few cookies that I would say is closer to a sub DPS rather than a support debuffer because he has a lot of off-field damage, but he's not necessarily amazing at that. There have been some Infinite Labyrinths in the past where he's been used where he can place down his turrets to get people on the other side of the map, but that doesn't happen too often, but it's still a niche that he fills. And poor Pistachio doesn't necessarily have a niche, but she still can fill her role as a light type shielder and buffer pretty well. Is she as good as Lemon? Not by a long shot. But is she absolutely useless like Muscle Cookie? Absolutely not. And finally, Ginger Brave. Ginger Brave isn't, good for the reasons that other cookies would be. He's good because he has 2 dashes as one of his promotions, and that makes him viable in something like the attack time challenges where you need to speedrun a level and clear it as fast as possible, which he can do because he can dash twice. And also the Hedgehog Guild Battle because you need to get to the opposite side of the map, and his 2 dashes allow for faster traversal. Overall, these cookies do serve a purpose and are nowhere near as useless as the D tier cookies, but unless you're building them for that specific purpose that they serve, it's not really worth building them. Next up, we have B tier cookies, and the B tier is comprised of Wizard Cookie, Malasauce Cookie, Dark Choco Cookie, Chili Pepper Cookie, Rye Cookie, Crushed Pepper Cookie, and finally Chamomile Cookie. Now these are the middle of the road cookies. They do serve more purposes than C tier cookies, but they aren't nearly as good as A tier cookies. First of all, we have Wizard Cookie, who is a powerful light type debuffing tagger. His abilities have big AoEs and they continuously do damage when he's not on the field, making him super ideal for a mode like Champion Raids because he's the only light type tagger and debuffer, and making him usable in a mode like Infinite Labyrinth because he has big AoE off-field damage. Malasauce is actually the exact same way. She's a fire type tagger, fire type debuffer, and is really ideal in those same scenarios. The only issue is that both of their usages in Infinite Labyrinth have been dropping a little bit because of other cookies. While they are super duper useful, they are no longer as good as they used to be in their respective areas, specifically in Infinite Labyrinth, despite maining the best taggers for their elements in champion raids. For Wizard, it's because Lemon kind of fills his role better. And for Malasauce, she's just a little slow, a little clunky, which makes it hard to get high clear times. Moving over to the fighters, we have Dark Choco, who actually went up a tier alongside Rai, who also went up a tier. Dark Choco got buffed and he can finally do his job a little bit better. He's easier to play because he has less stacks, and his abilities do a little bit more damage, which is definitely useful. He does struggle in a lot of game modes, but he's becoming more and more used in Infinite Labyrinth, which is definitely a good thing because that's definitely a mode he's good for. Nothing has changed with Chili. She's still essentially worse Jalapeno, but she isn't bad by any means. She just isn't as good as her rival. Rai has gotten buffed a couple times, and unfortunately the buffs haven't done all that much. She still isn't the better win DPS in champion raids, and she still doesn't find usage in Infinite Labyrinth, or any other game mode for that matter. At this point, it's probably a Chili situation where she just isn't as good as Basil Pesto in either of those areas. Next up, we have Crushed Pepper and Chamomile, who also went up a tier. Crushed Pepper and Chamomile are essential for Sugar Rush, and they're also good supports for the respective elements in champion raid. Chamomile is the only option, but Crushed Pepper, despite Peach's release, is still used because he can provide nice buffs for his team. Chamomile is also just a solid healer overall, so she has that going for her. Hey, have you found the video enjoyable so far, or have you found it helpful? Liking the video and subscribing to my channel could definitely help me out. These videos do take a long time to make, and it takes like a second to like and subscribe, so you know, there's just some food for thought. Now A tier is where things get a little bit spicy with my picks. Starting it off, we have Cherry. Then, following her, we have Kohlrabi. Following him, we have the new addition Sugar Globe, and also Basil Pesto. And we got Durian, and finishing it off, we have Alchemist Cookie. Now, this is definitely more of a spicy tier, like I said, because people are probably going to disagree with some of these placements, and that is okay, but I know I can justify them. Like Twisted Donut, Cherry Cookie is through and through a sub DPS. Her entire kit is based around doing damage off field, and oh my gosh, she does a lot. She's incredible for a mode like Infinite Labyrinth because you can just throw her stuff down on the field, switch out, and she'll be burning enemies alive. And her numbers are incredible for it as well. And she's good for any mode that has a big group of enemies, where you can use multiple cookies like seasoning dungeons and story mode, or for something like Sugar Rush. Essentially anything that isn't boss centric, Cherry Cookie is good in. Despite being a tagger, she has no debuffing capabilities, but that's fine because she isn't meant to act as a debuffer. She is meant to be a second DPS for your team when she isn't on the field. All this while being a common cookie makes her an incredible option. But I still can't justify her placement in S tier, even though I could last time, because while she is really good, she isn't necessarily special. Don't worry, I will touch on that a little bit later. Now we have Kohlrabi all the way down in A tier. This is because, first of all, Dark Element has fallen off. It is no longer the highest scoring element. Not to mention, Kohlrabi is very dependent on his promotions and his supports in order to do damage. So while a Kohlrabi cookie with 4 or 5-star promotion is really strong, he isn't nearly as good as the other fighters because of that. Now Sugar Globe is in a kind of similar situation. For the time being, she was the highest scoring cookie in champion raids. She no longer is, as far as mono element goes. Not to mention, she is very hard to build in order to do good damage, and is also very support reliant. She's also single target, meaning you can really only use her in game modes that are strictly boss based, because if you've tried using her in story mode, you know it's an absolute struggle. And if it's hard to use them in story mode, don't even get me started on other game modes. Overall, while she is strong in champion raids, she doesn't find much usage anywhere else, and she's only this high because she really is that high of a score in champion raids. Now, Basil Pesto is simply a very solid win DPS. He has the best AoE in the game, which is, you know, good, and he's a solid DPS. He's usable in a variety of modes, story modes, seasoning dungeons. You can use him to clear Infinite Labyrinth, but comparing him to the higher tier fighters, he just isn't there yet. But that's okay because he's still really good. Some other modes that he specifically really shines in, he can easily clear something like Tower Rift. He's also really good for the Light the Torches guild battle. And then we have Sting Durian, who is probably the highest tier raiser of them all. Because of his buffs, he's finally worth using. And while Sting Durian always had a niche in Infinite Labyrinth, he's finally an actual good option because he just does damage now. so he's just overall solid. Finally, we have Alchemist Cookie, and the reason why she's up here and not down in B tier is she actually still finds more usage in Infinite Labyrinth. Just take everything I said about Wizard and Malasauce, apply it to her, except she's actually better in Infinite Labyrinth. Her ultimate lasts quite a long time, and she has some pretty solid off-field damage, while still acting as a dark type debuffer. So overall, this is a really solid tier of cookies. Next up, we have the S tier. Starting it off, we have Rockstar, then we have Jalapeno, then we got Lemon Zest, Cream Soda, and Plantain. Oh, but what about the other 4 cookies down there? So I forgot to mention at the start, but we are finally getting the S plus tier. That's right, the S plus tier now exists because I finally think there are S plus tier cookies. Starting with Rockstar, Rockstar is overall a really solid buffer still. He can buff his entire team's attack and their water type damage. But unfortunately, compared to Peach Cookie, he just doesn't do what she does better, if that makes sense. His heal is worse, his damage is worse, his buff for the universal part is technically worse. But is he bad? No, he's not bad. He's still very, very functional as a cookie. If we think about it, now we just have 2 Rockstars. And another thing is that Rockstar doesn't come online as a water type buffer until final promotion, which is very expensive and not everyone will have. Next up, we have the 3 DPS cookies, and I just want to quickly cover each of them because I don't want to spend like 5 minutes talking about them. First off, we have Jalapeno, who is the best. She is currently the highest scoring mono element DPS out of the 3 of them. She's also very widely usable in every single game mode in the game because her arrows pierce through enemies. She's ranged, she has good AoE, she has good wave clear, she has good single target damage. Her special skill does a ton of damage, her ultimate does a ton of damage while also being a big AoE. She's very strong at lower promotions, she's even stronger at higher promotions, she's fairly free to play friendly with her builds. As of now, she is probably the best fighter in the game. Following her, we have Lemon Zest, who is in a very similar situation. While he isn't the highest scoring DPS in champion raids or even for his element, he's still very good at that while also being really, really strong everywhere else as a light type DPS, especially in a mode like Infinite Labyrinth where his ultimate can be used to clear entire waves of enemies. He's pretty much just as strong as Jalapeno, but she is still a little bit better than him. Finally, we have Cream Soda, who is exactly like the other 2 except she is melee. But also like Lemon Zest, she will shine in more wave-based game modes where there's a lot of enemies, but unlike Lemon Zest, her single target damage is a bit lower. Also, unlike the other 2, she does need some promotions to be a little bit more functional because her promotions are very, very important. But is she bad at her 2-star promotion, her 1-star promotion? No, she is not. She's still very functional. Finally, we have Plantain, who is up here because he is very unique and fills a very good niche. Plantain, at least to his extent, is the only grouper in the game. He can group up enemies with his ultimate, and with his special skill, he does a ton of burst damage. While his debuffs are only to his specific element, as a DPS in a mode like Infinite Labyrinth or other wave-based game modes, he is very, very good. Not to mention, he is the only cookie in the game that can buff your team's speed, which could be useful in some scenarios. So yeah, these are really good cookies. They're definitely worth investing in, but let's get to the star of the show today, the S plus tier. Now, starting off this S plus tier, the best cookie in the game is going to be Candy Drop. Following her is Lemon, Blackberry, and Peach Cookie. Candy Drop is hands down, as of now, the best cookie in the game. Much like Cherry Cookie, she is definitely meant to be a sub DPS. Her off-field damage is really, really good. But unlike Cherry, she also debuffs with her ultimate, making her good as a debuffer. And she can also kind of be used as an on-field damage dealer because her 5-star promotion gives her a giant nuke on her charge attack. She is, and I kid you not, usable in literally every single game mode, much like Jalapeno. But unlike Jalapeno, where other DPS might be good in other scenarios, Candy Drop is just the best in pretty much every single scenario. In universal teams, Candy Drop is still the better tagger. Not to mention, because her abilities hit a lot and a lot of the Fire World enemies have shields where you need to hit them a lot of times in order to break it, Candy Drop can even do that when a lot of other cookies can't sufficiently do that. Okay, I'm gonna stop glazing Candy Drop and let's move on to Lemon and Blackberry. Both of them are essentially equal, but I did give Lemon the slight advantage above Blackberry. Both of them act as universal buffers and buffers for their specific element. Lemon is a better buffer for his element than Blackberry, but Blackberry provides more universal usage than Lemon. They both also act as sustainers, but they're essentially equal in those categories as well because their healing/shielding isn't, all that great. They can also essentially be used in any game mode. But the one mode I do want to talk about is Infinite Labyrinth, where they see somewhat equal usage, but because Lemon is used a lot more, so I guess it's not equal, but Lemon is used a lot more, that's why I gave him the overall advantage above Blackberry. Because his off-field ultimate can one-shot the first few waves of enemies, and then he is just a really strong light type buffer from there on out. And Blackberry can do surprising damage as well. But because we have someone like Alchemist who can sometimes do better in those scenarios, that's why I can't put her above Lemon, because she still isn't as used in that game mode. Finally, we have Rockstar's replacement, Peach. Now, she isn't higher in the tier list because I just don't think she does as much as Lemon and Blackberry do as far as other game modes go, but she's definitely better than Rockstar. First of all, she has incredibly good on-field damage. Her kit supports her doing damage when she is on the field, which is incredibly good for a buffer because it means she isn't just sitting there doing negligible damage. And I mean, when she's using a support build, she does good damage. Like, that is incredible. Not to mention, she has a really good heal that doesn't need... I tried saying 2 words at once. That doesn't scale on any stat and doesn't need any stat in order to do good healing. Not to mention, just like Rockstar, she has her attack buff on her ultimate, which makes her very good. And finally, the nail in the coffin for Rockstar was that in order for her to be good at mono fire, you need her at 4-star promotion, not 5-star promotion, which means even for her own element, she comes online a lot sooner. Now, is her buff as strong as his? No, it's not, but Peach also does a lot more damage herself, which definitely adds up, and it definitely adds up because fire is the highest scoring element right now. But yeah, this is the tier list. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Do you disagree with only some placements? I just want to know your guys' thoughts. Anyways, until next time.